how do you cope with disappointment? In this week's episode of Carlie's Couch, we talk about how to handle disappointment and what disappointment means for you.
Hola, happy Monday, everybody.
Welcome to Carlie's Couch. Thanks for listening. We hope you all had a great Valentine's Day weekend, good Black History Month so far, and we're going to keep all of that momentum going. From relationships to disappointment.
Ew. Sometimes they go hand in hand, unfortunately. But we think it's important to talk about disappointment. We've talked about guilt and shame and anger and a couple of other, those jealousy and stuff in the past. So if you haven't heard those, go back and listen. But it's important to explore emotions on a deeper level. And disappointment, sadly, is something that all of us have to experience. And so it's like, how can we make it a better situation, like, for ourselves? Because I know I've been disappointed.
Yeah, and disappointment is interesting to me because it can kind of like cover a wide range of emotions. So like when I think of disappointment, I think about being sad, even a little angry, maybe guilty. There's a few other things that kind of can wrap up into it. So it could be a lot to unpack.
For sure. We sent out the emotions wheel like a long time ago, and that helped kind of teach us about emotions. And it's funny because disappointment actually comes from disgust, like on the emotions wheel. And that has like its own, like, you know, so it's very complicated. Like all these emotions are nuanced, but I thought it was interesting that it was actually in disgust.
So what is the definition of disappointment to you, or whether you know?
So I looked it up. So the dictionary definition is sadness or displeasure caused by the non-fulfillment of one's hopes or expectations.
Okay. So we always hear people say like, you know, watch your expectations, or as I always say, manage your expectations. And we hear people saying like not to have too high of expectations, things like that. And so I guess that makes sense. I'm trying to think if there's any like other random situation that's not that, but you only feel some kind of way because you hoped for or wished or expected or thought it would go a different way. So yeah, I guess that does kind of cover it. It's like a failure to reach an expectation that you have.
Yeah, and that's funny because I wouldn't have said that all of them are from expectations, but when I think about it, like how I would describe it, being let down, being like, that's all literally stems from our own personal expectations. And so when we were researching for the episode, I found this quote and it said, "Expectation is the root of all heartache." And that recognizes that when we experience disappointment, our hopes and expectations are in misalignment with reality. And I think, like I said, it's something that we've all experienced and will probably for the rest of our lives.
And keep in mind, too, there's levels, right, of disappointment. I could be disappointed when, wow, this is wildly specific, but I could be disappointed when Baskin-Robbins calls me and tells me they don't have the exact flavor I ordered on Uber Eats. And then it's like, oh, well, I got to cancel my order. Like, that's disappointment because I wanted something and then I didn't get it. Or you could be disappointed when somebody steals from you. Or you could be disappointed you know, with those huge things that happen. So there's different levels to it. And I'm guessing, you know, to me, it makes sense. You can challenge it if you feel. But that based on these different levels, you know, it's something that you're like, that sucks. But like you get over it real quick. Or it's something that you can let fester for longer, or something that can affect you or roll into other things. Depending on how deep of an expectation and how deep of a disappointment it was. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
There's definitely levels.
I think so. I do think that, like, depending on your groundedness and stability for the day, some small disappointment could sometimes lead to a lot bigger reaction if you're not. But on a typical day, it's like, all right, you ain't got my ice cream flavor. Yeah. But if that was like the cherry on top of a day that you had, it might be your breaking point.
Yeah. Or I can see how maybe a lot of what we might call seemingly smaller disappointments could still start to shape somebody's mindset into being like, man, I never get what I want, or I always lose, or, you know, it could become a bigger thing in your mind because of all these little disappointments that keep building up in different ways. So it all still matters. Carlie, when was the last time specifically that you remember feeling disappointed?
It's funny because I typed this question. I'm like, I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, I got a lot.
I'm about to say, you can go ahead and I'll ponder on it.
Yeah, so right this moment, I'm disappointed with myself because I have a client piece that I was due definitely like last week that I have not finished. So I'm disappointed because like, all right, I have been trying to juggle a lot of things, but like I know that's something I could have like, if I just go a little bit beyond being tired, and unfortunately for me, I just be like, yeah, I'm going to bed. But like I feel bad about that. So it's like something that now, like with each day that passes, I'm like, oh, when am I gonna get to it? And I feel disappointed about that with myself. I felt disappointed the other day when I got somebody a gift and then it didn't fit them. So I was like, shoot, like I felt bad about that. Felt disappointed trying on my own clothes and I was like, that's a little tight. I felt disappointed, a big disappointment when somebody else, and their mistakes that they made. But I guess, why did that affect me so much? It affects me because I didn't make their issue about me, and it doesn't really have anything to do about me, and yet just disappointed in them because, like, bro, I just expect so much more from you, and because it seems very hypocritical from, like, the way they preach and say they do things, but then it's like, but this huge thing is happening to you, and, like, why would you be so preachy about something, and then you're over here making terrible decisions? So that really disappointed me in another person. So those are a few things that I can think of off top.
Yeah, I think the easiest ones for me to notice in myself are work things. Like, oh man, I wish I would have gotten that thing done that I said I was gonna do. Like I was a couple of days late on a proposal from what I said, but also it was an arbitrary timeline, so it was like a minor disappointment for me. Those are the main ones. I think the last big disappointment that I had was that I had wanted to fly out to Oklahoma to see my mom in November. It just didn't work out the way I wanted it to, and I was a little disappointed. But then I lost her in December, and then I was like a lot more disappointed that I didn't get to spend that time with her that I had planned on.
Yeah, so kind of like, was that a disappointment in you?
Yeah, for not like pulling the trigger and just doing it.
That's fair.
Feel like I let myself and kind of her down with that.
But also, I would say too that to counter that, so I can easily think of a lot of disappointments because, I mean, if you think about your even day to day, there's just so many like little things that can happen. But I for sure also can combat most of it, or not combat it, but maybe balance it out. But also, like, there's a lot of things in the last week also that I'm like was really excited about, proud about, et cetera, et cetera. And so those things didn't really super define the thing that was with the other person because it was like so ridiculous and big that was like, all right, whatever. But now I'm like, you know, you do you, and kind of have removed myself from that space. But for the most part, these disappointments, I would say I'm pretty good at like rolling with them and moving through them. But it does weigh on you. Disappointment can weigh on you.
How would you describe like what it feels like for you?
So I'll try to think specifically, like with the couple examples I use. So not getting a thing done that I know is expected of me makes me feel guilty. It brings my confidence down. Something like getting something for somebody and it not working out. Probably 'cause I was so proud of like, yes, I got this thing. I found this thing. I know they're going to love it. And I was like, oh, it didn't quite fit. That felt like, how did that feel? I want to say disappointed. I felt
Real?
sad, like oh man, like I didn't, like it didn't really matter that I got it. So, but I am gonna get it fixed up and try to get it so that it works out. But yeah, I just felt really bad about that. Maybe like a failure. That sounds real deep, but like you know what I mean, like
Yeah.
in that area of like, dang, so I failed. Like I was trying to do something, but I failed. And then other disappointment in other people to me feels like anger. Anger. It feels like how could they do that? And it feels like, and maybe there's also maybe shame. I'm trying to think of what it is within me, but there's also something within me for caring about the person in the first place type thing, or like even caring about like what's going on, or having expected something from somebody in the first place when you may have seen different things, but you still, you know, it's like, all right, like I didn't expect you to disappoint me, although maybe I should, and they did. So, Yeah, but I also felt angry because they also got me thrown into some stuff. I'm like, I don't have nothing to do with that. So yeah, I just a lot of anger with that. So as you can see, like how we said at the beginning, I think that there's a big range of ways that it can affect you or ways that it can feel for you. But definitely in all of those cases, in either way, it's always a coming down, like a kind of like from like a status like place of joy, happiness, whatever.
I was gonna say, little disappointments in myself feel like anxiety, like in the middle of my chest, like a little ball of, like I should have, like I missed this, like it's like a little letdown, but like a big disappointment. It feels like when you were little and you fall and you knock the wind, get the wind knocked out of you, which is like one of the worst feelings in the world. But that's what big disappointments feel like to me. It's just like all the air just leaves you, and it's like, man, like all the air gets deflated out of your balloon. Like it sucks.
Yeah.
Big disappointments suck. That's like the best way I could think about like describing the feeling.
Yeah. And we already said like there's different levels of them, but in what other ways can disappointment be different? Like the different situations perhaps.
I would say thinking about like, so if we're thinking about like expectations, the biggest ones that I usually have are for myself. And so I think about like, if I expect myself to do a thing or to accomplish a thing or have it or to be this person or whatever, and like letting myself down, like that's one different type. For me, it's like so self-disappointment. Then we talked about like others letting us down and our expectations around them. Expectations in life for things to just play out a certain way. So those are kind of all expectations based, but I think those all feel a little bit different.
But also I think that even within those different categories, there's some disappointments that you can control and some that you can't. And so for me to be disappointed in maybe something that I can get done, I was more in control of that, and I'm disappointed. So it's like more of like a feeling of, man, I could have, should have type thing. Whereas if somebody else has done something, I can't control that, and yet that affects me. And so I think there's still a different approach to how you feel those and how you deal with those. I think another difference is also that it's for sure exacerbated if it's you feel disappointed by someone that you really care about or that you love. So by a family member, by a partner, it's different than when if a stranger was just like walk by you and bump you or something, or like if Baskin Robbins doesn't have your ice cream flavor or whatever, right? So that's very different because you have, of course, a higher desire to be respected or loved or whatever by that person. And you, in return, have a higher expectation of them as opposed to just, any old thing around you. And so that does hurt more when you are closer to somebody.
Man, and that makes me think about on the flip side of that is whenever you let someone down that you really love, admire, and like that holds you to a higher standard. Like that hurts a lot more than like, oh, okay, I kind of messed up on this little thing. So that hurts more. The other type of disappointment that I'm thinking is like activity based. So like there's two actually. So activity based. So you try to do a thing like your team to win a game or you to win this project or do this and then you fail. And then also, I guess it's one and the same, like rejection. Like you get rejected from a relationship, from a friendship, from a project, from a client, from something like that. I think that those are also different types of like disappointments.
Yeah, those are good. And I'm really glad that you mentioned that you can be the disappointment to somebody else too, because like we never want to forget that sometimes we're the villain also. Can you think of a time, maybe recently or an example of you disappointing somebody else?
Yeah, it's in like in a relationship capacity, like me not showing up as my best self in a situation. Like I got like real snippy in an argument for no reason. And just like
For no reason?
Oh, well, it was like an internal thing. It didn't have anything to do with them, but I had some stuff going on and I just like kind of took it out on somebody. You could tell it was like a little disappointing for them. I feel like we just been growing and I felt terrible. That's like when I was thinking about getting the wind knocked out of me. I was like, damn, I've been working so hard on, not doing it. And then just like compounding disappointment of all the personal work I'm doing, but then also hurting someone else's feelings that I really care about.
Yeah, so sometimes like we'll disappoint others, but also I recognize when somebody's now like trying to use that against you as opposed to like being able to move through that thing. And that doesn't feel good to disappoint other people as well. But also, even if I disappoint somebody else, there's certain examples where I'm like, I don't care. Like, if they might express a disappointment in me, but I did what I wanted to do, then I don't care as much, as opposed to maybe like what you're saying is like something you're working on, or something that you've committed to doing or want to do, and you fall short of that. Then yes, you can like feel bad about that for sure. But I think that really is determined upon how much you care about the thing, and I think that reflects more on you feeling maybe like guilty or kind of ashamed in those spaces as well.
Absolutely. When I was researching about disappointment, they had a typical setup of how disappointment occurs. So I'm just going to roll through that, and you can start to think about like where you might see disappointment in your life. So one is you're in an uncertain situation where you have hope for a positive outcome. And then,
oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Can we talk about them?
Yeah.
If I have something to say. So with that one, I think it's interesting. You're in an uncertain situation. So maybe I'm trying to think of examples like, what is that? But then I guess it's like kind of life.
Yeah, it's life.
Right?
It's like, so you're like, submitting for a proposal, or you're asking someone out on a date, or trying to, deepen intimacy with your partner, and you're not sure because maybe y'all haven't like been there yet or do something. It's like, you're not sure what the outcome is going to be, but you're hoping for something positive. Even like some seemingly small, like, oh, I'm cooking something new for my partner. Like that can be disappointing if it turns out terrible.
Yeah, I actually, so someone was doing something kind for me, and I was so shocked by how afraid they were that I wasn't gonna like it. And I was like, I'm not like that difficult, and like I like activities, I like doing interesting things. Like I felt like it would have been an obvious thing, but like they were like, I was so glad, I was so nervous, like you weren't gonna like it. I didn't know, like I was so worried, and that made me I don't know if it made me feel good, but it's nice to know that somebody had like they didn't want to let you down. That's nice to know. But it also makes me realize like it was really good to hype that up and be like, thank you, that was so fun, or I really like that, or I do, like these types of things. So I know that made them feel really good because they were so worried about it.
And so that's beautiful. Thanks for sharing. The second one is that, so you're in this uncertain situation, you're hoping for something positive, and then you low key or high key believe that, you deserve a positive outcome. This could be passing the bar. This could be matching with a school, getting a client, getting the house that you've been applying for, or whatever, blah, blah, blah.
Do you think it's wrong to think that you deserve positive outcomes across the board?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it's delusional when you're not doing the work, or you don't have the thing, and there's like no sign, and you're not putting any effort to things. Like you don't manifest that way. I know that's like a buzzword right now, but like action and faith, and that means movement and doing things. So I think it's delusional if you think you deserve it and you're not doing anything towards it. But if you're actively working and doing the best you can, like absolutely, why not bet on yourself and think that?
And so probably a good frame in general in life, because we talked about this in kind of other circumstantial type things, but is to think more about like you deserve being proud of certain efforts, like not being outcome based. We talked about that in different ways, but like being proud of and being acknowledging of your efforts. I think if you focus on that part, you might not feel as let down by an outcome.
And so you're believing that you deserve this positive outcome, or you're, just really proud of your progress. And then you can start to visualize or fantasize about what your life would be with the outcome that you desire. So like, with this person, if it goes perfectly, like that whole situation, that person said, man, it just goes, oh, amazing. Or, whatever. And then you're surprised that it didn't happen the way you wanted it to. And you feel very let down and disappointed. Which can then lead to anger or resentment that you couldn't control the outcome through your personal actions.
Yeah, that's all very accurate, because I can think about even a couple of examples I've already just given, and like, yeah, that's pretty much what it is. Like, it may not seem as deep as all that, but it is. It's like you wanted something to happen, you thought it was going to be this. We always, let me not put always on y'all, but we probably always like envision how we want something to roll out or how we want it to be. And so whether you're nervous about that actually happening or not, if it doesn't go the way you want, now you have to deal with disappointment of that, because it's so opposite from what you were envisioning and hoping to see. So that is all very natural.
And so, Lex, how do you deal personally with disappointment?
Well, with disappointments with myself, I deal with it by kind of minimizing the importance of like the thing. So for example, in the big scheme of things, you know, like I am doing a good job, or you know, if I'm behind on a thing, that's okay. I might deal with it by kind of accepting that it's like maybe something behind, but then I will try to make up for it and try to like, all right, let me get back on and grind and like, you know, so that I am still showing up in the space I need to be showing up. Dealing with disappointment from others in a big way where I felt that I wanted to see something totally different. I think I sit in it for a little bit and then I don't know, this isn't really like very descriptive, but like I don't know how to say I just get over it. Not that you get over it, but like I at this point kind of can accept like, all right, this is the reality of it, and I'm trying to make sure I keep reinforcing what the reality is. And by that I mean like, all right, this person, I don't say that, like you're not a good person, but like this is the facts of like how this person moves and what this person is or what they want or how they act or whatever. And as much as you want it to be something else, as much as they might say a thing and you hoping they were actually living for that or whatever, they're not. So it's like, this is what it is. And now what am I going to do about it? Or how am I going to act about it? And trying to stay in a space of like moving accordingly. And then there's other disappointments like Baskin Robbins not having bubblegum ice cream, where I'm like, well, you know what? I really didn't need to be ordering ice cream at 10:45 p.m. So let me use this as an opportunity to do something better, you know, or do something different. Or still, I could still see like, all right, you know, what's the positive in this situation? Or in something like disappointing myself because I'm like, dang, this gift didn't work out, is, well, you know what? I'm upset, but I'm going to get it fixed. So I'm determined to make a change where I can make a change with something like that. I can take it, the thing to the tailor and get some cloth and extend it so it can make sure it fits. So there's some things where it's like I can make a clear path and move towards that path, or there's some things where you just have to accept, which I guess goes back to what we said with the some things you can't control and some things that you can, or you can only control how you react to it. Mm-hmm. So based off of that, yeah, I don't know. I guess I probably deal with it pretty okay. I'm not gonna lie.
Look, I was like, oh, that
after
sounds...
like a little bit of like at first, then it's like, yeah, all right. Like, what's the next thing?
That sounds very healthy. I heard processing feelings, pivoting, making a different plan to do better.
I'm definitely pivot master.
Skirt.
With all the emotions, because you got to pivot, and like work in my life in general, like it's always, you know, things always pop up, and I think probably because I've lived, maybe you would consider it a non-traditional type of life, but kind of always used to just being some BS. I don't know what's about to happen, figuring it out, all of those things. And so I feel like there's like a term, not about risk, but like I'm just not very fazed by things not going a certain way as much, or by things popping into the mix or whatever.
Yeah, and that's really important. The first thing I'm gonna do is process, and I won't belabor the point, but I definitely cry. Like if I feel overwhelmed or upset or something, like you got to process your emotions however you need to feel them. And I think that's the biggest piece, so that they don't get stuck. And then you can move on from there. So if someone disappointed me and it's someone that I really love, I'm probably going to talk to them and voice my disappointment if it's a reparable situation and something that we can grow from and all that. If not, you can cut that shit off and keep it moving. But doing that, and anytime it's with myself, I work on writing down the things I can do better, like where I kind of let myself down, how I can do better. And then if it's just some stuff I can't control, I reframe it to like stop looking at the outcome as the positive of the situation and start reframing towards the journey. Like, man, look at all this work I did. Like, look at all this. I learned so much from this situation. What can I glean from this? How does this make me better? Man, I'm so grateful that X, Y, and Z happened. And start looking at the positive of the situation. And I think that that's a big piece of disappointment that people can miss out on, because it does suck so much to not get the things that you feel you deserve or that you've been working for really hard. Like if you try so hard to study for this test and you cut out all the distractions and you did all the things and you still failed, that shit sucks. Like, nope, nothing's gonna take that away.
I don't know how that feels.
Like, look,
I feel like when I fail, it's because I didn't do my part. Well, but maybe that might not be all the way healthy way to think of it either, but.
Yeah. I was about to say, but for some people that really does happen.
Okay, that's my fault.
For some people that really does happen. Mm-hmm. And just reframing and looking at the positives. And so.
You're like, this wasn't in the notes.
Yeah. So there's a question that's like, should you avoid disappointment? And my answer is absolutely not. First of all, you can't. unless you have zero expectations out of life, which I don't think that that's a great way to live. And if it is, maybe you should hit us and be a guest because we could talk about it. But I don't think you should avoid it because I think there are so many things you can learn in disappointment that maybe you can't learn in other places.
So I don't think you should live life trying to avoid disappointment, but not fully because of that last piece, but just in general because that means you're not going to do anything. You're not going to take risks. You're not going to express yourself. You're not going to have hopes at a certain level. You're going to be a pessimist. And so for all those reasons, it just seems like life would be really dull if you did not have, higher hopes and expectations, even of yourself and other people. And so you shouldn't try to avoid disappointment and just kind of like sit in your room and live like a really like to yourself, not doing anything life because that sounds like a whack life to me.
And that's like the biggest regret. We did an episode on regrets. And the number one is all the things you didn't do. And it could be from a fear of disappointment.
But you can learn how to better move through and cope with and combat disappointment when you do feel it. I guess all emotions, maybe. I don't think there's any emotion that it's like you should be trying to avoid it. But yeah, it's like how do we let it affect us less? How do we move through it a little bit easier? And how can we continue to like learn through those experiences that we're inevitably going to face?
And so one way for all emotions, but disappointment, is to name it. Naming something gives you a little bit of space from it and allows you to see it for what it is. So instead of, oh my God, my life is horrible and it sucks, it was like, oh damn, I'm real sad because I missed out on XYZ and I thought I was going to get it. And so when you name it, you validate yourself in the moment for your feelings. You can then ride the waves of your emotion and let them pass through your body. Scientifically, emotions only last for 90 seconds in our bodies unless we continue to hold on to them and do not feel them.
90 seconds. Another way you can combat disappointment is by managing your expectations in general. Again, if you're kind of more focused on your efforts, what you can do, and less in fantasy world about like what will happen and what you want to happen. That doesn't mean like don't be or like to be realistic or quote about everything or to not hope for anything to happen. But to go into something, knowing like, hey, this could go this way or that way, but what I'm choosing to focus on right now is this moment, what's going on in the present, what I'm doing to add to the situation to lead to a particular outcome. Like it's okay to want a particular outcome, but when you manage your expectations, you're also paying attention to like what's real and what's happening in front of you.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Another one is to not let it fester. So like disappointment sucks, and yes, feel your emotions, but don't ruminate. Don't sit in them and let them overtake your life, because then like when you're marinating on what should have been or what might have been, you can miss out on life, and it can start to perhaps color your view of other things in life. Like you might stop taking risks because you felt so disappointed, or you might stop dating because someone really let you down or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's like you can't let that one disappointment, no matter how big it is, like color the rest of your life.
Yeah, and with that recommendation to not let it fester, we could easily go down a list of things that we typically talk about as far as how to not let it fester, which is maybe going for a walk, going for a run, working out, call a friend, hang out with people, like set some dates for yourself, like to go to dinner or, see what's playing at the movies, distracting yourself sometimes. I think distraction is okay. Have we done an episode on distraction?
No, we probably should. That could be interesting
because there's positives and, negative distraction, and there's some complexities there. But, not letting it fester does mean, sometimes you got to kind of force yourself to move forward and move through things. But in those moments when you are distracted or with other people or whatever, like, it kind of just reminds you there's other things going on for you, journaling, all of those things. So move into that space of just action in other places instead of letting it fester. Because sitting on the couch or like, just looking at their tweets all day or rolling back through them texts and stuff like that is just it's not going to do it for you.
Absolutely not. With that, one of the distractions that we wrote down is to use humor. So watch something funny, do something like, I don't know, just kind of.
Or like being able to laugh at yourself or like at the situation too.
For sure.
And I don't know, that's not hard for some people, because I know some people who like that's their first go-to. It's like as soon as something happens, they just be laughing. And it's like, this is not funny, but That's kind of like a mechanism, but it can help you like through those feelings of disappointment for sure.
And then all these can help you increase your disappointment tolerance. These healthy practices, like as life continues to come at you, and building your resilience towards these things.
Yeah, I would say like start to pay more attention when you feel disappointed. So like my examples went from the ice cream to like somebody wilding out with their life. You can keep in mind like that you have a particular tolerance and just note when it's like something, anytime you feel disappointed, like at what level is this? And like, oh, it's nothing, this is nothing, this is nothing. I can get through this. And like just paying attention to that, I think can help you move through even the bigger ones a little bit more easily, or recognizing that it's not something that has to like stop you in your tracks.
Absolutely. Hit us at Carlie's Couch on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Let us know how you deal with disappointment, if you learned anything from the episode, and if you have any questions or topics for our next episodes.
And I would also say with topics like this, don't just think about like how this person, that person disappointed you, but think about how you may have disappointed other people. How do you deal with that, like disappointing others? How have you been disappointing to yourself and different things, right? Like give it a well-rounded thought and like approach to keep in mind too, that like it's not just about like how other people did something to you, but how this is appearing in your life in these different ways.
Yeah, make sure that perspective always starts with self. That's where we always go back to.
I think look, I'm going back all into the episode, but I do think about that often. Like if when somebody does something and I'm like, man, that's so disappointing. Like, and it literally will be that like that's disappointing that you went that direction or that you did a thing or whatever. Even if it's not directly like to me, right? But if I see that disappointment, then I'm like, but you know what? Like, how many times have I like been a disappointment or done a certain thing or made a bad decision, right? And so that also kind of helps me to have a grace. Not that I'm trying to justify somebody else's stuff, but that helps me in that moment to also like, I don't have to fester on that or think about it that hard because you know what? I've done some BS too. Maybe even similar, maybe even worse or similar like type of thing. And it's like, well, at that age for me that I did some things too. So like understanding a little more, not feeling like you have to make it into like some attack or make it into some huge thing, because also like we've all been in those positions.
Yeah, and you said grace. Grace with self and grace with others is huge and will help you like momentously in life to grow. Mm-hmm. So always give yourself some space and grace, and others too. And if they're not, or if they keep stepping on your toes, like they shouldn't be in your life probably. And then this week's shout out to Emmolei, who did the music and the score for 3 Ways, a new movie out on Hulu, making some big moves. Y'all go check that out. Follow her, tag her at EMMOLEI on Instagram.
No, on her Instagram and her Twitter, I believe, are Emmolei Sankofa. You can find them in the show notes. I'll put it in there. But I've known Emmolei for a long time, as in 6 or 7 years maybe, because she used to live in Los Angeles. And then she moved back to the East Coast, I think, around COVID times. But she's so funny and she's so cool because she, like, really goes hard with her art, which is, like, the science of sound and just, like, all these little things that she makes sure she includes and thinks about when she scores for TV shows, movies, and all types of things. So it's such an interesting world. But she's so funny. Like, she goes so hard, like, with her branding and her rollouts and, like, the way she presents things and talks about her projects. But she's really good, dope Black woman artist. So definitely check her out and check out the Threesome on Hulu.
3 Ways.
Oh, 3 Ways. What? Wait.
It's called 3 Ways.
Okay, the 3 Ways. My bad. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong thing.
Oh, all good. Okay, and so follow her, support her, check out all the dope stuff she's doing. She's also doing some AI stuff with HBCU bands, which also looks really cool. But then we'll end with our question of the week. Lexi, if you could breed 2 animals together to make a new species, which ones would you choose?
So I would not do that. I would breed something that I could eat. So maybe a couple of different sea animals. So I would like to have like actually that might be a lobster. I was gonna say like a bigger version of like a huge shrimp, or like a fish that had like crab leg type taste. I don't know. I will put together something I could eat though. Hopefully that would be good. But I feel like a lot of those things have already probably been done.
And they probably still exist in the sea somewhere or the ocean. I would probably breed together something like a red panda and a cheetah. So probably be fluffy and cool looking and do cool things.
And be aggressive as hell.
I don't know. Red pandas are mad chill, so they're not even real pandas.
Not the damn cheetah.
I mean, but like with the red panda, like he might be chill. Fluffy had a cute tail.
I hate. I'm about to be real pessimistic, but I hate like little animals that be having the big face. Like, why do you put certain animals together? I saw somebody had breeded a greyhound and it was a pug, and it just looked so stupid.
That's crazy.
It was like so little, but then the head was like a big like
a bobblehead.
Yeah, it was stupid. So yeah, that's terrible. But most of the things we see are kind of breeds of stuff that's been like put together and all that anyway. So whatever.
So I hope y'all have a good week, and we'll see y'all next week.
Adios.